Okay, my name is Bailey Walls, and this is my video presentation. So just a little bit of an introduction of what we're going to be talking about today. We have been reading and studying a book called Teach Like a Champion, and it provides just some powerful teaching techniques for teachers to learn and implement within their classrooms. And some of the following techniques we have watched clips over, and this is just going to be some information about how to get your students college and career ready, and also some information about how it has helped me become a better teacher. So the first clip that we watched and kind of discussed was standardize the format. So the video starts off with a teacher, and she's teaching middle school students, and you notice very quickly that there is a paper on all of their desks, and they're getting asked questions in a very formalized way. So basically, kind of like the picture that I have included on the right, this is a T-chart. Standardize the format is going to be a lot of worksheets and packets that are already made up. That way that students and teachers know exactly where to look for the information that they are having to collect. So basically it makes observations and collecting data more efficient. It gives students a consistent space, kind of like this sheet right here that I have presented. And there is an obvious space for a cause, an effect, and a topic, and that makes it more simplified for the students. It allows students to be disrupted less. In the video, the teacher asks the students questions, and she allowed them time to elaborate and write down their answers. That way, when the teacher walked around and looked at their answers, they weren't disrupted in the middle of it. And students don't waste time looking for the information that they need to write down. They know exactly where to go and when to go to look at it, and so do the teachers. And there's basically just more time to collect the data rather than wasting time on checking answers. So some information that impacted my thinking. When asked questions, students know exactly where to put their data on their work. In an example, Megan was the teacher. She asked her students to write down what they think the meaning of disposition is. So whenever they were asked a question, they knew exactly where to go to on their paper to write down what they thought the meaning of disposition was. And due to consistency, Megan is able to scan the aisles of the classroom to check the data for her students. So an example of this was when Megan was able to address the errors in her answers for her students. She would see and say, I noticed that we are coming to this answer very often, and if it was incorrect, she would correct them. Megan was able to collect student data quickly by using the standardized format. And an example of this was Megan is able to scan the room while her students are writing their data, allowing more time for collection and less on checking. So therefore, when she would ask a question, she would allow them time and count to 10 to answer the question while she was scanning, which allowed her time to check their answers. The format allows the teacher to understand the strengths and weaknesses of their students. An example of this is when Megan is able to review any misconceptions her students might have about the information. It allows the teacher to have an idea of the pace of the activity in order to plan their lessons. So an example of this would be if you continuously use the same format, you would be able to know every day this is going to take us X amount of time, and it just allows for more time to do other things. And the students understand what is expected of them when they are collecting their data. So the students are going to get very familiar with those formats, and they're going to know what's expected, high quality of answers they're going to need, and just an overall what's going to be asked on the worksheet. So information that I will take and implement as a teacher, preparing a format for data collection. I think it's important to create your own format just for your style of teaching, and that way you can review it over and over again before you give it to your students so you know what's expected of them. Practice a steady pace to collect data. I think it's important to get familiar with your sheet and your standardized format. That way when you do present it to your students, you are comfortable with it to make them comfortable with that format. Address incorrect or correct patterns seen in student data. So just kind of like Megan did when she walked around the room and saw that many students were getting the answer incorrect, she addressed that in a positive manner and just gave positivity to any incorrect answer or correct answer. She set high expectations for data, which is something that I would like to do as well. She evaluated strengths and weaknesses of students. I think that's very important when you're walking around the aisle and looking at students' data to recognize that some students are struggling a little bit more than others and some are advancing higher than others. And I would like to keep a consistency in collecting data. So I would like to continuously monitor my students at all times. So my personal and professional reflection of this is that the standardized the format strategy allows for more time to collect student data instead of wasting time checking it. This strategy trains the teacher's eyes to look in the same consistent place while attempting to gather the student data. And by doing this, I think that the higher quality data can be retrieved without wasting time on unnecessary things. So the second clip that we watched was affirmative checking, and this was a first grade teacher who wrote a math problem on the board and allowed students to have sticky notes, then proceeded to tell them that they needed to get the correct answer and give it to her so they could go do their independent work. And so basically, this strategy is students must get confirmation that their work is correct before moving on. It allows students and teachers to be fully aware of how they are doing. So a student's going to know if they continuously keep getting the wrong answer, and so is the teacher. It can be used as a kind reward or an exit ticket. So on the right, I have just kind of examples of a sticky note of what she used within the video. And then the bottom picture I thought was neat. It was exactly like a ticket, but an exit ticket. So they have to get the answer right before they can move on to the next thing. And a designated spot for students to enter their data, which is the sticky note and the exit note. And students are asked to check their work if the data is incorrect. So the teacher in the video, she would review the answer if it was incorrect and say, go check your work, which was a positive incentive, but it wasn't saying that they were right and they needed to go try a little bit more. The teachers must make sure that the students are mastering the lesson before moving on. So the teacher must make sure that they are getting the correct answers and not just letting them slide by just to get to the next thing and save time. So some information that impacted my thinking. The teacher is able to monitor how the students are doing by using the strategy. An example of that was Hillary was able to see which students aren't giving correct answers when she checks the sticky notes. Hillary is able to use moving on as a reward. She uses the sticky notes as a ticket for an opportunity to go to the movies, is what she says, which is just kind of something to provoke their interest in going into their independent work. Hillary also keeps a warm and positive tone regardless if the answer is right or wrong. When checking student data, Hillary is able to use a quick and efficient way that does not waste time. I noticed that she had many students all on a mat, and there was different rows of colors, and so she used the colored seating mat and called on rows of colors one at a time. Therefore, she wasn't bombarded with a bunch of students at one time, and it went very effectively and did not take up a lot of time. And by not accepting incorrect work, Hillary sent a message to her students that the quality and value of data is more important than speed. And information I will take and implement as a teacher. Students must master the skill before moving on. I think that's very important. With this strategy, it is important to stay positive and to normalize wrong answers as well as correct ones. So I think it's important to let students know that it's completely okay to have the wrong answer as long as they continue to try. Come up with a plan on how to effectively use time while affirmative checking. While I was reading the material, I noticed that many teachers that were writing within the book said that it could be time consuming with as many students as you're checking. So I think it's important to have procedures set. That way you don't take too much time and you know what's going on at all times. Consider having a student helper when checking data to save time. And this was also mentioned in the book. I thought that was a good idea. However, I don't think I would like it personally. I would just have to test it out because I wouldn't know myself if the students were getting the right answer or not. Provoke interest in moving on to the next thing by using rewards, kind of like she used the ticket. I would like to be creative just to kind of get students more engaged and interested. and monitor students for their strengths and their weaknesses. So my personal and professional reflection of this was that it is a great tool that enables the teacher to be constantly aware of how the students are doing. I think that it is important to come up with effective procedures while using this technique. Checking the work of 20 to 30 students at a time could be time wasted that is needed in the classroom. And so in conclusion, I think that it is important to just provide a positive environment in order for students to strive to get those right answers, even if they get them incorrect sometimes. Okay, so the last clip that we watched was the no opt-out. And key learnings from this was that it is not okay to not try. It eliminates students saying, I don't know, or not trying. It ensures that all students take responsibility in their learning. It promotes peer involvement. It allows students who know the answer to help others to get to the answer. And it lets students know that you believe in their ability to answer questions and to succeed. So information that impacted my thinking, this was an older age of students. It was a male teacher, and he started off, his name was David, he started off by asking a question to a young girl who dreams the American dream. And the student stated that she did not know the answer and that she skipped that question on the homework. So David's response to the student was positive, yet challenged the student to dig a little bit deeper. So an example of this was David asked the student about the writing about the same subject in a different class. So they had wrote about this subject previously, so he challenged that student to think about a time and remind herself of it. David calls on another student to help the struggling student answer the question. So an example of this was David asked another student to give a cue. A cue is just kind of a hint. It gives the student not the answer, but just kind of leads them to get the right answer. David encourages positivity to the student who helps give cues. So an example of this was David asked all the students to give snaps for positive feedback for the student that helped the other one. David promotes the idea that there is no option not to try. He returned to the student several times. He collaborated many different students within the classroom, and he never let the student have the answer. He made her work for it. And the end result is just to hold the student to a high standard and reinforce individual accountability. So information that I will take and implement from this strategy as a teacher is to do not allow students to opt out of answering any questions. Learn positive incentives for both students that try to opt out of answers and students that achieve the answer, to help them achieve the answer. Just like David doing the snaps, I think is important for all students in this environment to have positive encouragement. And remind students that I believe in their ability to succeed. Give cues to the correct answer. Do not provide the answer without a challenge. And follow up on the students that attempt to opt out. So if I see that many students are trying to opt out every day, saying they don't know and not trying, I think it's important to really monitor those students and their learning. So my personal and professional reflection of this strategy is that it is important for students to know that it's not okay to not try. I think it is important to reinforce individual accountability and to also stay calm and positive when helping that student reach the answer. And with this strategy, I think that the overall goal is to let the students know that you believe in them and you believe that they can reach success. And here are my references. I mostly reference the book because that's where our videos and our information came from. Thank you.